So this video is just meant to be like a simple, down and dirty breast chest feeding preparation 101 kind of deal. Not a lot of detail. I do find that it's important to have some conversation and some time to reflect on breast or chest feeding if that's your intention before baby is born, but getting wrapped up in all of the details and all of the potential obstacles does more harm than good. So I want you to be aware of some of the most common obstacles and some of the best practices. Some of the information may not make a whole lot of sense until you are physically doing it. So keep that in mind. Also know that while I have some training in breastfeeding, I by no means consider myself a lactation counselor, and certainly not an IBCLC, which is the only type of lactation counselor that I currently recommend clients work with if they do have breast or chest feeding concerns. And I have, my favorites in the area that I like to suggest. But yeah, so let's just talk about a couple of things. I'll try to integrate some images into this video when I edit it so that you can see what I'm talking about and not just see my face. So let's talk about a latch first. When we go to have baby latch, we want baby to approach the chest chin first. And we want to see once they're on that both lips are flanged out, that both lips protrude. So hopefully in my editing, here's an image. And you can see that baby's lips are both turned out. You can also see that in order to get a good latch, the latch has to be pretty deep. So know that it's not just the tip of the nipple that we're hoping baby gets in their mouth. We really want to give them the opportunity to have breast or chest all the way back into their mouth. That's how the physiology of the suction that they use in order to feed will work best. It is important to know that as a best practice, if you have baby latched on and it hurts, you should unlatch baby, right? And you can do that using one finger to kind of break the seal and take baby off, and then relatch. It does you no good. It does neither of you any good to continue to feed with a latch that is not ideal. And it's better to make a good habit to find a proper latch where you're comfortable. If you're comfortable, chances are baby's comfortable and baby's getting what they need. As baby is feeding, you can look at their kind of suck pattern to get a sense of how they're doing. So we want to see a suck pattern that's suck, swallow, breathe, or suck, suck, swallow, breathe. When you start to see baby sucking more than twice, they may be struggling. It may not be a good latch. Likely it won't be comfortable for you either. So the beautiful thing about feeding it is that it is this kind of intuitive, natural process. And while there are certainly obstacles come up, and I don't want you to buy into the rhetoric that feeding your baby is easy and everyone can do it and you should feel bad if you can't figure it out, because that's not true. Like, it's hard for a lot of people, but once you kind of trust that your baby is getting what they need, as long as you're taking care of yourself and you're comfortable in having what you need, it usually works. So part of that will be making a list of lactogenic foods, so foods that promote the production of milk, in addition to all of your other like postpartum deliciousness, nutritious foods. We really just want to be sure that you are taking care of yourself when you're, caring for an infant, but especially if you are feeding that infant from your body. So have that like quick grocery list. Make sure that it's an easy thing. Everything in your kitchen, everything in the pantry is something that you know will nourish your body. Something you may consider, and something I'll provide more information about below, is getting body work done for your baby. This can help and has helped a lot of people who are having difficulty with their latch, and even folks who find that it looks like baby may have a tongue tie or a lip tie. Because baby's crunched up so small in utero, and we don't really move in the way we used to as a culture, baby might not get that full range of movement that they need for muscles and connective tissues to release. So something like a craniosacral therapist or a chiropractor may be able to help do release with baby that impacts the soft palate, the tongue, the jaw, all of these structures that are really, really important for baby to be able to feed. I want you to have your breastfeeding SOS sheet or your support list in the areas that you most commonly will feed your baby, or have those people, those numbers programmed into your phone on your favorites. So it's really easy in those moments when you are feeling overwhelmed or running into an obstacle to call someone up and be like, either ask for encouragement if you're feeling like you want to give up, or say, hey, I just need to vent about this. Can you listen? I want you to lean into that support network in your community and also have the professional hotlines available. Those hotlines have been really, really helpful for a lot of people. Some of the most common worries I hear from folks who are beginning to breast or chest feed is the worry that their baby might not be getting enough. I want you to really start to trust now that the process will work as long as you are taking care of yourself. For most people, it will. Obviously, that's not always the case, but we can supplement when and where it's necessary. If baby's not gaining weight and you're seeing a lactation consultant, and they'll certainly make recommendations for that. So otherwise, just try to have blind faith in the fact that it's working. The same way that you would trust the birth process, trust the feeding process. The next concern that I hear is people wonder if their baby is pacifying. And I want to say, yeah, sometimes they probably will be pacifying and not eating. But my question is, why does that matter? I don't want to push anyone towards particular parenting practices, but I will say this. From a standpoint of evolutionary biology, our children want to be close to us. That when babies are first born, they're just like reptilian brains, so they're fight, flight, or freeze. They're basic functions of the body, and then they're like a mess of mirror neurons, which means that they're going to mirror back whatever energy or emotion is most predominant around them. So holding your baby, letting them stay latched on, even if they fall asleep, even if it seems like they're not eating, helps you to build a trusting relationship and a trusting bond with them. And while at first, especially in the first few weeks or months of baby's life, it may feel depleting, it may feel like a lot, and some people might tell you that you're spoiling your baby, etc. In order for your baby to become an autonomous little person, they need to trust that when they need you, you will be there. And in order to build that trust, you need to be there repeatedly. You'll notice with a really young baby, if you like put them on the bed as you're folding laundry and they're fine, maybe they're completely asleep, and then you take one piece of laundry that needs to go down the hall into like a closet or whatever, and you're walking down the hall and you hear baby start to fuss and cry. Baby knows if you're not there with them, and they're programmed that way because, again, take away the infrastructure that we have today. If we were living way back when, you wouldn't put a baby down and then walk away from them because there may be predators or danger nearby. So they're still programmed to feel that way. We also used to live in much bigger family groups than most people choose to today. So the parenting dyad that's most common, right, where there's two parents taking care of one infant or multiple infants, it has its shortcomings. There used to always be someone either in arm's length of the baby or holding the baby. So I want you to get used to the idea that you may have to hold your baby a lot, especially when they're very young. You might have to hold them in order for them to fall asleep and sleep soundly. Putting your baby down and then going to do something else while they sleep really is not super realistic. So there may be, this is where you have your co-parent stepping in to help. You have other families stepping in to help. You have your postpartum doula or doulas stepping in to help so that someone can hold baby and baby can sleep. And you can either do what you want, or even better, you sleep too. So co-parenting can come, or excuse me, co-sleeping can come in many different forms. It doesn't necessarily mean that your baby's in your bed with you. I know that lots of people feel uncomfortable with that, and that also there's tons of public health information that's going to encourage you not to do that. So know that co-sleeping might be a bassinet just right next to the bed that's at the same level, so that if baby does stir or need to eat in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day when you're taking a nap, all you have to do is pull baby over to you versus having to get up, go to another room, or go to the bassinet across the room, pick baby up, get yourself comfortable, feed. So it just begins to make a lot more sense, especially if you're breast or chest feeding, to have baby in close proximity, especially if, I'm going to encourage you to sleep when your baby sleeps. So sometimes that might look like you're holding your baby, they fall asleep, you're exhausted, you fall asleep, you wake up and you're like sitting on the couch and you fell asleep, and you might be a little freaked out, like, oh my gosh, the ABCs of sleep safety, I'm not following them. I want you to know that's okay. Most of the time, just parent intuitively. Trust what feels good. It probably doesn't feel good for your baby to be across the room. It might, but in most cases, it's like your baby needs you, and you need them. Remember, you're in this fourth trimester phase, um, especially if you were the one who gave birth to your baby. You are both kind of learning how to be separate entities, and that doesn't have to be such a forceful transition. You can let it be easeful and just gradual. Like, you stay with baby most of the time at first, that trusting bond is built, and baby is actually more willing to let you put them down as they get older, leave, go do something else, and they're fine because they know that they can cry if they need you, and you will come because you've taught them that. All right, that was a tangent. Let's get back to feeding. So some best practices for feeding. Think about switching sides when you feed. So say you're feeding baby and baby is seems to be done eating, maybe they're falling asleep, rather than just, all right, they're done, take them off, put them down, or, lay down with them, in which case they may not have been completely satiated and they could wake up several minutes later and want to feed again. Switch sides for a couple of reasons. In just moving their position, you may stir baby enough where they're like, oh, hey, cool, I'm still hungry, I'm going to eat again. Also, your two sides will make different milk in terms of temperature, in terms of antibodies in the milk, and just instinctively baby knows that. And you may notice that sometimes baby doesn't want to feed from one side but will feed from the other. And there's just something going on environmentally that is telling baby to do that. Another best practice is to avoid pumping until you have to. So until you have to because you're going back to work, or until you have to because you're, regaining your autonomy in some way. It can feel, really overwhelming, especially at first, to have your baby need you so often. So if that is bringing up, mental health considerations for you, and it's important that you have the freedom to leave the house for a while and just be in your own space without your child, please, like, introduce pumping when you need, but if possible, delay that. The reason for that is milk production is demand dependent. So once you introduce a pump, there's going to be more demand, you're going to produce more. Oftentimes that's when people all of a sudden get engorged again. They may develop a blocked milk duct. They may have mastitis, whether it's an infection or just from the blocked milk duct, but it's not really comfortable. And also, it can just kind of be a feedback loop. We're like, okay, now I have more supply, so now I need to pump more or feed more. So be mindful of that. One of the ways around it, if you want to start having, milk to feed your baby from a bottle or through any other supplementary nursing system, is to use passive collection. So there's two other videos in this playlist. One is about the Haka, the other is about Milkies. Those are just two brands of passive collectors, and they work differently, which is why I included them both. But basically, when you're feeding from one side, you'll notice that usually you're leaking from the other. And if you put a nipple pad in there, it's just going to like soak it up, and that's going to go to waste because you're going to wash that pad or throw that pad away. Or like you're using a rag, whatever you use, right? If you start to passively collect, you might find that you're making a significant amount just in that leakage. And so then you have that to freeze or to store properly. and use to feed baby at another time. So it's a great way to start to build up your reserve without pumping. Next, I want to talk about positions while you're feeding. So remember, baby is that bundle of mirror neurons, meaning if you are tense and you're trying to get baby to latch, it's going to be a lot harder. If you're tense and feeding, which I see happen when people are, having some obstacles feeding or nervous about it or just getting used to it. I also see it kind of recur when someone goes to feed in public for the first time because, there's all kinds of societal pressures. So you might be uncomfortable or vulnerable feeding in public for the first time, so you might tense up, right? Baby's probably going to have a harder time latching or not latch at all, and baby might start to get visibly upset. They'll reflect whatever you're putting out for them. So try to find positions where you're relaxed, right? Don't compromise your comfort for baby feeding. So if you're like leaning forward to get baby to latch, and then they're like, oh no, they're latched on, I better not move, and you stay like this and you feed them like this, you're gonna hurt. You're not gonna be comfortable. Bring them back. Adjust the latch if you need, adjust the positions, use pillows. There's lots of things you can do to support yourself. And so many different positions you can try to feed in, especially as baby gets a little bigger and has more head control. I want to talk about hunger signals as well. The most common one that people talk about is rooting, right? So babies putting hands near their mouth or they're smacking their lips. I want you to look for other signals too. So baby might have irritated movements. They're kind of like flailing their arms or stretching and squirming. Baby might change color, like their pigment actually starts to get red because they're just like hungry and frustrated. There might be huffy breathing with that too. So a little like okay, so I want you to watch for these things. Another one you can watch for is their hands. So a hungry baby is like this. A satiated baby, a calm baby is like this. So when you're wondering why baby's crying and you're kind of running through that checklist, are they hungry? Is it their diaper, etc.? Check their hands. It can usually give you an idea of whether they're looking to feed or be calmed in that way, be soothed in that way. I want you to try and watch for these signals and avoid baby crying to let you know that they're hungry. Luckily, evolutionary biology sets you up for success here because if you're feeding, and especially if you are the parent who gave birth to the baby, then you have hormones in your system that make you hypervigilant. And I'm sorry about that because it means that it will be harder to sleep and definitely harder to get a deep sleep. But the advantage is you're likely to like wake up the first time baby has a huffy breath or squirms. I want you not to make yourself crazy because of course that hypervigilance can very easily turn into postpartum anxiety if you don't keep it in check. But do be mindful that you're responding to baby's hunger cues before they cry. Once baby starts to cry, you then have to soothe baby and then get them to eat. So the process of soothing baby takes up more time, takes up more energy, especially if it's the middle of the night. Make it as easy on yourself as you can by avoiding baby getting to that distressed state. I want you to also expect and understand that your baby is more likely to feed for longer periods of time or more frequently at night. There is, a good reason for this, which is that your milk is most nutritious in kind of the wee hours of the morning. Also, because of you being tired, it being the middle of the night, and that kind of relationship that you might have to soothing your baby or having the patience to let baby get a good feed, a full feed in the middle of the night can play a role as well. So if you expect to feed at nights and you kind of have that in the back of your head, you're prepared for it, you're a lot more likely to be patient with baby in the middle of the night, which I know can be difficult, especially when it goes on for weeks, for months. Have systems in place to support yourself. Sometimes hiring a postpartum doula to help you overnight is really great here because there's someone taking care of baby in between feeds. You don't have to soothe baby to get them to sleep after you feed. And you can usually get a little bit of a deeper sleep even despite hormones making you hypervigilant. So that's something to consider if it's accessible to you. I want to talk about self-care here as well. because especially knowing that you're going to be feeding baby at night, I really do mean it when I say that I want you to sleep when baby sleeps. Um, that might look like naps in the middle of the day, even though the sink is full of dishes or the laundry needs to be done. Those things can get done later, I promise. You can ask for help in getting them done as well. I want you to focus on hydrating and nourishing yourself, nourishing baby, giving both of you opportunities to feel light and feel fun and feel joy in a time where it's really easy to get burdened down by all the difficulties. By all means, hold space for this period of grief and change and transition, but also let's bring joy back into the picture as well. And I want to help you with that. So that's why if we're working, face to face with one another, I'm concerned with like, what makes you happy? What do you enjoy doing? What are your favorite foods? What makes you laugh? So that we can bring that into your postpartum space, especially if you are breast or chest feeding your baby, which can have its own unique demands. That's also why I'm asking you to look at your relationship when it comes to asking for and receiving help. Um, I want you to be well versed in asking for help long before your baby is born. So practice it now, lean into your support network. Um, Also, maybe make a list of local professionals that you might want to hire during postpartum. And I don't just mean postpartum doulas or lactation consultants. I also mean things like landscapers, people who you can call to come cut the lawn, plumbers, repair people, so that when any little thing pops up and needs to get done, and none of your friends or family members are able to do it for you, you don't have to put so much energy into doing research. You just have that quick list, and they're either people that you've had come to do work before or friends have recommended. So I really encourage that as well. And lastly, trust the process. I'm sure you're tired, or you'll get tired of hearing me say, trust your instinct. You know how to do this. It's intuitive. No one knows you better than you, but it's all true. And that's why I say it like a broken record. I really need you to believe it. I believe it. I know it. I know that on your feeding journey, you will probably run into some little glitches, some obstacles. It's nothing that you can't overcome, but you also are empowered to make decisions that are best for you. And so if that ends up looking at any point like ending your feeding journey, I am here to support you through that as well. With that, I'm going to stop rambling and end this video. I will put lots of links in the description box below. I want to be mindful of anyone who may be working with me that does not identify as a woman, that there are additional resources that I may be able to make accessible to you. So if you are breast or chest feeding and some of the language in the resources below feels like it's not resonating with you or feels uncomfortable, please just let me know. All right.